Hey, Larken Rose here. So in my last video, I was a tad harsh with members of the service, meaning thugs of the state. And I should have been. It's totally justifiable. But not really to balance that out, but to sort of add to that, I wanted to do a video where I actually commend and thank a number of people who joined the military. Now, not thanking you for joining the military. I can sort of thank them for having good intentions, because a lot of them believed they were signing up to do something good. I particularly want to praise and sort of give some serious respect to people who went through that indoctrination, because whether you're talking about the Marines or whatever branch of the military, the amount of indoctrination and brainwashing where they just bludgeon you over the head with, you don't matter, you suck, you're worthless, we're going to make you into something worth something, and by being worth something we mean you're going to blindly do whatever we tell you to do and kill who we tell you to kill. That is an intense level of indoctrination. Now, I grew up surrounded by this sort of conservative version of statism, and so I had my own level of indoctrination and authoritarian propaganda, but nothing like the level they put people through to go into the military. And so when someone has been through that and still eventually comes out the other end believing in freedom, that's really impressive to me. And I know a ton of people that's true of, people who are former military who are now anarchists. And I can't say for sure whether I would have gotten there if I had gone through that level of indoctrination, because, I don't know. As it happens, many, many years ago, I took the entry exam to be in the National Guard and did really well. And they said, oh, you can do whatever you want. You can be a helicopter pilot or whatever. And I was still a statist at the time, obviously. Wouldn't have taken the entry exam as an anarchist. But still something was just for some reason, just no, not going to do that. And I don't know why. I can't pretend it was philosophical. So I had never been through that, and I'd never been through the just massive mind control and propaganda and literally torture. Boot camp is designed to torture the individuality out of you, just literally, directly. And they're not secret about it, like I said before. So if somebody's been through that, it took me a long time just with the normal level of statism everywhere and the normal level of propaganda. It took me ages to give up statism. It took me years. It's kind of embarrassing how long it took. So it's scary to think how much more difficult it would have been if I had been through the just massive torture and indoctrination of being into the military. So when somebody's put into that and still manages to come out the other side with a brain and learns how to think and learns to recognize, oh yeah, I was an agent of evil, whoops, wasn't trying to be that, signed up to fight for truth and justice and freedom and blah, blah, blah. That's impressive to me, and I can't just assume I could have or would have done the same thing if I had gone through that, if I had joined the military. Because, most people who join the military are young and oblivious. I mean, that's by design. They want young, idealistic, but ignorant, gullible twerps to sign up thinking, rah, 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 I'll go to be brave and defend the country, when there isn't a whole lot going on in people's heads yet. Because they're just, they're late teens or early 20s, and they haven't thought a whole lot, and that's when the government wants them. It's you're still an idiot, you have testosterone, you have energy, you can get strong, and you're probably still a complete ignoramus, so we can work with that. We can make you into a tool of the state. So I did want to actually commend people who went through that much more intense version of propaganda and still came out the other side as an anarchist eventually. Now, a lot of them have, I've heard them explain that being in the military actually, on the way in there's the propaganda, but actually being in it does a whole lot to make them not believe in the military or authority because you get to see up close and personal the end result of authoritarianism, which is completely bonkers and counterproductive and, like, at best, a ridiculous waste of time, and at worst, profoundly evil. So a lot of them sort of learned the hard way while they were already in, oh yeah, this has nothing to do with the crap they sold me on the way in. So for the people who've been through that, good job. Now, I have to give some sympathy. It's weird because also condemnation and sympathy, because I think people are responsible for their actions. A lot of people who were clueless got indoctrinated, went into the military, and did things either all the way kill innocent people or help the machine, or to one degree or another were part of a giant immoral authoritarian monstrosity when they didn't know any better and they weren't thinking for themselves. And on the one hand, I don't think, well, you didn't know any better, so that's perfectly okay. Like, if anybody is capable of saying, no, that's wrong, I'm not going to do that, then sort of anybody is, and you're still responsible. If you choose to blindly follow orders and do the wrong thing, you still chose that. That's still on you. You're still responsible. But at the same time, it's a lot more difficult when you've been trained to be an attack dog. Acting against that training and using your conscience and your brain is a lot more difficult. And therefore, it's a lot more impressive when somebody actually does that. So I have met former military people who actually did things that, in retrospect, they think were horribly wrong. Either they sort of enabled it or were indirectly, or they were directly involved in killing people they knew nothing about, that they have every reason to think included innocent people who didn't deserve that. And although obviously that's wrong and I condemn it, I also have sympathy for people who, now that they know better, they're stuck having to remember having been that and having done that. And I've talked to them, and I would not want to be in their position where I just hadn't thought about it enough to do the right thing back then, and now forever that's on your conscience. And some of them have like, well, what can I possibly do to undo that or to make up for it? And so that's a horrendous struggle. And it doesn't forgive them, doesn't mean they're not responsible, but that would be a crappy position to be in. And it's a thing I've talked about before, is if somebody on his own decides, I'm going to just go beat people up and steal their stuff, like it was his own idea, it was out of malice, that's a different thing than if somebody is like, well, I just did as I was told. And they're both evil. They're just very different flavors of evil. One is cowardice. I'm just going to do as I'm told and pretend I'm not responsible. And the other one is malice. Now, is one more evil than the other? Well, you could sort of say that the genuinely malicious person who did it on their own is a worse person because they can't pretend they had good motives. But on the other hand, like, if you should have known better and you still did it, does that make it worse? Maybe, maybe not. And so the sort of the toss-up of, and then historically, the vast majority of evil didn't come from the malicious people. It came from people stupidly obeying orders. So in historical reality, you could say that's worse, because that has caused way more destruction. Hannah Arendt's book, The Banality of Evil, gets into that, talking about the Third Reich and how basically most of the people who made that happen were basically just us. They were mindless order obeyers. They weren't even particularly malicious. They weren't even particularly like racist or anything. It was just, well, I have my job and I'm just enforcing the law and I'm just pushing these papers or doing whatever my part of the machine is. And that's where most of the evil in history has happened, is unthinking order obeyers, not even malicious people. Like, there's a few of them at the top and then a whole bunch of brain-dead order obeyers. So yeah, it's still really damn bad. It has caused immeasurable suffering and injustice in human history. So they're both pretty damn bad, whether it's individually malicious or just stupidly obedient. But I wanted to end with this. I've mentioned it on and off, and half the time I forget their names. So picture having been through that indoctrination. Like, going through that literally physical and mental torture to make you into an unthinking robot of the war machine, like that is going to impact everybody. And I know a whole lot of people who went through that. And to escape the other side with your conscience, that's impressive to me. But there's one guy in particular, I've mentioned him before, that I want to thank for his service to humanity. Because not only did he overcome that and do the right thing, he overcame that and did the right thing while in battle, while still active duty, while under commands from the higher up, and under threat of being court-martialed or shot or worse. And I'm talking about what happened at the massacre of My Lai during the Vietnam War. Police action during the Vietnam War. Where the massacre was going on. It's unspeakably horrible. I'm not going to describe the details. If you want to read about something unspeakably horrible, it's spelled M-Y-L-A-I. Look up massacre and you'll get more details of horribleness than you could possibly want. The thing that ended it was a guy named Hugh Thompson, who was a helicopter pilot. And what finally ended it is him and Glenn Andreotta, I'm not sure how you pronounce it, and Lawrence Colburn were two people under his command. And they took their helicopter down, parked it in between the U.S. troops and the victims of the village, and pointed their guns at them and said, "You're gonna fucking stop or we're gonna kill you." In that setting, with all that indoctrination, all the training to train out of you, your conscience, your individual judgment, and then you're in battle, and they very much design it so that once you're in battle and people are shooting at you, there's your brothers and your comrades, and all you're doing is trying to stay alive. And the evil psycho warmongers know if you set it up like that, this band of people who now knows each other will do almost anything to anybody around them to keep their band of brothers alive, including heinously evil stuff. So they put them in that situation on purpose. So in that setting, after that indoctrination, and in combat in a foreign country, to have the strength of character to turn your guns on your own brothers and say, what you're doing is evil. And not only am I not going to participate, and I'm not just going to report you later, I'm going to fucking kill you if you don't stop it. And that's what Hugh Thompson and Andreotta and Colburn did. And they prevented, we don't even know the numbers of plenty of horrible things that already happened there, but they stopped it. And that level of integrity and strength in that setting, with that background and that indoctrination leading up, to still have their humanity come out and say, I'm going to risk everything. I'm going to risk getting killed by my own fellow soldiers to defend complete strangers. I don't even speak their language. I don't know anything about them. But I can tell they don't deserve this. And if the only thing that's going to keep them alive is me pointing a gun at the people I've been spending time with over here, feeling scared and shot at the whole time, then I'm going to do it because it's the right thing to do. That is humanity shining through authoritarianism. And I don't know anything else about Hugh Thompson, and I'm sure there are things about him I would have disliked, but that act of bravery and actual service of humanity, that makes him an absolute hero in my book. And people who have watched my videos know how rarely I use the word hero. Hugh Thompson was a hero for threatening his fellow soldiers and saying, I'm going to kill you if you don't stop the heinous atrocities you're committing against innocent people. Middle of nowhere, other side of the world, I don't know where I am. You're the only people I know here, and I'm still going to point my gun at you to stop you from doing this. That is courage. That is a badass. That is a hero. And so the fact that humanity still has examples like that, where it can sort of dig its way out from under the authoritarian training and conditioning and still have somebody do the right thing and put themselves actually in harm's way to defend the innocent. That is a level that only a tiny percentage of people are capable of doing. And a very, very tiny percentage of people in the military are capable of doing the right things and turning their guns on their brothers in arms when they realize, yeah, my brothers in arms are evil, warmongering terrorists. They're the bad guys. And, you know, if I'm any part of me is still believing in defending freedom and defending justice, and I'm in that scenario, and it's obvious to me that the guys wearing uniforms that look just like mine are the bad guys, well, crap, I better do something about it. And Hugh Thompson did something about it. Of course, initially, the government tried to get him in trouble, and I'm surprised nobody just shot him, and condemned him, and he stuck by it, and he reported it. And then eventually, they commended him for his bravery when it came out what had happened. And then I think like 26 of his fellow soldiers were charged with like war crimes or something for what happened there. But right after he did it, he knew full well, like, the higher-ups are not going to like this. My fellow soldiers aren't going to like this. Like, you're in a place all the way alone, all the way isolated, with every reason to think it would end very badly for himself. He didn't just close his eyes. He didn't just not participate. He didn't just walk away. He all the way did what people in the military pretend they're about, which is putting himself in harm's way to actually defend the innocent. And that just gets massive respect in my book. And I think, weirdly, for a lot of people, the military builds certain character traits and strength and discipline, and those things hang around even if at some point the person's brain realizes all the indoctrination, all the order obeying, all the hierarchy, all the bullshit authoritarianism, like, that falls away. Your brain can outgrow that, and you can still hang on to the good things you got from boot camp, and, you know, shed the really, really bad things, of which there are many. So I do want to commend the people who went through that and came out the other end as voluntarists. It often takes a while, and there's sometimes, you know, some event that's the catalyst for them noticing this is insane and evil and this is not what I signed up for. But that to me is one of the reasons I'm actually optimistic, because when that much time and effort and money has been put into training someone to be an unthinking robot, and then at some point the robot goes, this is messed up, I'm not following orders anymore. Like, that's pretty dang encouraging. Now, if the people who haven't been through that could please muster enough courage and brain activity to realize, yeah, bowing to ruling classes is not the path to freedom or justice or anything of the sort, that would be nice. But I think it's telling that the ruling class now basically characterizes their own veterans as potential terrorists, because they realized, yeah, we made them badass and they understand combat. And if somebody's been through combat, they tend to be a lot less scared of, like, dumb little, there's a lot of people who are just like, oh, I'm so, you know, confrontation averse. They're like, I don't want to have a disagreement with my neighbor. Well, if you've been shot at and you've shot people, and then you go back to your daily life and you're like, wow, having an argument, like telling somebody they're being an asshole is not that difficult and it's not that scary. We should probably do that when someone's being an asshole. And I know a number of people, you know, former military people who are like that. It reminds me so much. My favorite part of Lord of the Rings didn't make it into the movie because it would be sort of anticlimactic. It's at the very end when they come back to the Shire. And it's so funny to me because it's a perfect analogy, and Tolkien was actually in World War I. But it's a perfect analogy of when somebody's been through war, like fearing death on a daily basis over and over again, and then comes home to a little bureaucratic obnoxiousness, And compared to what they've been through, they can just go, this is dumb. No, you're going to stop or we're going to make you stop. Like, I was just shooting at people and getting shot at. I'm not going to, like, bow to this little bureaucratic, whiny piece of crap who's not even armed, who's not anything. He's just some snivelly little waste of space on a little power trip and is whatever his dumb little bureaucratic level is. So it's a little bit ironic that the ruling classes manufacture their own worst enemies, because if someone has been through that and then came out the other end as a voluntarist or anarchist, that's the person I want on my side. So it's a little funny to say that I feel more secure around a bunch of people who went through that indoctrination and then overcame it than I do around just normal people who never went through it. Because having basically gone into mental hell and come back out, I think those people can often get a more profound, in-depth grasp of just how important self-ownership is and individual sovereignty. In other words, sovereignty has been kind of ruined by the sovereign citizen legalese bullshit. But I think they end up with a strength that the ruling class really shouldn't have given them. Because after the statism fell away, they still have the understanding, they still have the combat skills, they still have some of the sort of psychological strength that it gave them. Only now they're on the side of actual freedom and justice. So you political parasites may kind of regret what you created. Good, you deserve it. So I do want to commend people who basically they had to dig out from a deeper hole to understand the truth. And I greatly respect that. I never went through boot camp. I never joined the military. Got pretty close to doing National Reserve. National Guard, which is only kind of sort of pretend military. But yeah, people who were that inside the machine and that thoroughly indoctrinated, and their brain and their conscience still managed to climb back out of it. That's really impressive to me. So thank you for your service to humanity, all of you who fell for the initial bullshit, got indoctrinated, figured out it was crap, and then came back to humanity. Yeehaw.